So you should have something like this that transitions out of your 3 objects. You've got a bit of a scale bump to create that momentum. And now for the second part of the drill, I'd like to show you how to add a rotation, and then we're going to nuance that rotation with the graph editor to create a more human-like transition, a little more bounce. So I can just press R for rotation, just get the rotation menu up. The first keyframe I'm going to put is at 0, and then I'll press U so I can see all the keyframes, and that gives me a path of keyframes for all of this morph here. So I'm going to go to function F9 with that keyframe selected and make that an easy ease keyframe. That's a good keyboard shortcut for you. And all the while this was happening, I want to make sure that my layers are aligned as well, and that the anchor point, using the anchor point tool, is centered into the object. That way that the transitions are going to be smooth. If not, what's going to happen, say if the anchor point is on the corner, it's going to rotate around a wild edge, right? It's going to look like a very uncentered spin. So you want to make sure that that anchor point tool, you use that and you center your object along with aligning it. So I've got my first keyframe. I'm going to go to this part where the scale is at its highest, and I can use these arrows here just to jump ahead and create a few more keyframes. Now I'm going to make this first keyframe, well, you can go 90, right? And then the next one, what spins back, I don't want that, so maybe that one 90 as well. So now what happens is that I get kind of a spin as it comes in. And that looks pretty good. And then the second, this is the pause here, so the second transition, I'm also going to make sure that my pauses are in here. So just make sure you're at that keyframe, add the pause in by just clicking the keyframe again. It just repeats the keyframe. And then once we're here, let's go to 180. So that means it's halfway down. And you can see actually that this is kind of jumped. Well, that's not too bad. Now, if you notice any jumping, you can always alter this, right? The anchor tool, so that's in the center of the object, right? Great. And then the last keyframe I'm going to put in using the arrow is just 180 here. And that's my last frame. So looking good. I've got those rotation keyframes in there. Now let's go into the graph editor and do some more nuancing here. So I'm going to go to my first break here where it swells up. And I'm going to hit the graph editor. And so the green, right, the sort of bright green is, or teal green, I guess, is my rotation. And I'm just going to create a bump keyframe, meaning I'm going to just create a little bit of a crank too far, and then it comes back to its 90 degrees. So I'm going to add a keyframe by clicking on the pen tool, add, and I'm going to make sure that this just raises up. All right, so you may not notice it as much on the circle because the circle doesn't have any edges so you can see it, but it does create a little bump effect, right? Let's try on the square, which should be more noticeable. And again, use my arrow tool to just raise that up a little bit. Let's see what happens here. There we go. Great. So it's, now I'm noticing a little bump. I like the second one, but the first one looks a little odd because it kind of is a little jerky. So let's just see if I can't soften that out a little bit with my handles. And the other thing I want to do is just make sure that this anchor point, so if I go up to my menu here, let's look at all of it in the anchor point. Make sure that that is, we'll hit a keyframe here. So anchor point and then U for all, right? I'm going to go back here just to make sure that this is hitting all the right points. Anchor point, so should start there. And that's when if you notice that your anchor point is a little off, right? So as it spins from the triangle, this beginning, so this is the snap. Okay, so it should be there. Good. Now it's back, fairly centered. Keep it there. Where's the next one? Keep it here. Just repeating these, and these can they don't have to be easy because they can just snap to the point. Now it's a little over, so I'm going to just drag it just slightly to the center of the object, and that should be fine. Better. And we'll just make sure that this whole thing is aligned to the center of my frame. Perfect. And that's using the graph editor to create those little nuanced points in the jump. Get used to doing that. And also just adjusting my anchor point a little bit so that it's centered each step of my transition.